the heart and soul behind every business. Stories. Welcome to Business Story of the Week, hosted by me, Joshua Laurie. From setbacks to comebacks, from tragedies to triumphs, we inspire entrepreneurs through conversations that matter. Witness the magic that turns dreams into reality. Whether it's your career, business, or life, your success is always one story away. This is Business Story of the Week.
Hey guys, this is Richard Nilsson, and you're here listening to Business Story of the Week.
Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the man himself, Richard Nilsson. He's our guest for today. And of course, my name is Joshua. I am your host for today and every day and every episode. We ask you a question, and I think this one is a lovely question. People are going to love this. And whichever you are listening right now, you guys are going to love this episode. The question for today is, what if your pet could tell you exactly how they feel? Would you listen? I feel like that's a dream for every pet owner out there to be able to understand their pets a lot more, because Richard is the perfect guest to answer that question. Richard Nilsson is a seasoned serial entrepreneur and industry expert with a strong foothold in the technology, companion animal, media, and lifestyle sectors. He boasts a track record of spanning more than 2 decades with a 15-year stint in the dynamic Asian market. Of course, we're going to talk a little bit more about what he does currently with My PetGo, but also we're going to delve deep into Richard what Richard has done throughout his career. Richard, thank you for joining the show today. How are you doing?
Yeah, thank you, Joshua, for having me. I'm doing fine. Currently in sort of a holiday spirit here in Spain, where I'm currently residing. I'm in Barcelona, and it's supposed to kick back into business mode next week here. But it's very slow pace at the moment. Until you.
Oh, that's great. You get to relax, get time to slow down before things start picking up. Then are you going to stay there for business, start picking up again?
Yeah, look, I moved here last year, and the idea was to kind of be closer to I suppose, the European pet markets, because that's my business these days, and also be closer to the US market, where I have, a 7-hour flight to, say, New York, where we have sort of the bases in the US market, as opposed to a 20-hour flight from Singapore, where I used to live prior to kind of coming here.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, you truly are everywhere. And of course, you've had the introduction says everything, 2 decades, 15 years stint in the Asian market. Richard, before we start really getting into it, I want to ask the origin story. I always start off the show this way. What was a young Richard Nilsson like? What did the young Richard Nilsson think about entrepreneurship, technology? Did the young Richard always know he was going to get into the pet business? What would the young Richard say to the Richard of today?
Wow, that's okay. That's a couple of questions there. So let's see how we can answer one by one. So the young Richard Nilsson did not know that he was going to at one point work in the pet industry. I did not grow up with pets. I had a father who did grow up with pets, and then he got bitten, and then he was allergic, in particular to cats. And so we never had dogs or cats growing up, or anything else for that matter, fish or guinea pigs or rabbits or whatnot. So that wasn't clear to me. Certainly, in entrepreneurship and tech was I'm born in 1982, so that makes me 42, I suppose. And tech was something that kind of came around in the late 90s. And I grew up in Sweden, and Sweden was quite early with a lot of tech. And I think one of the main reasons was it's in general a dark and cold country. There's not that much to do. So, computers found a way to get into the homes very early, right? And I remember my dad always had computers. He always bought new computers, but he never used them for anything apart from playing chess with them, more or less, right? And then he was very early with mobile phones too. So he had the first kind of briefcase phone that you could bring with you, and he was in the boat industry, so he always thought it was good to be able to connect if you got stuck as you go out on the sea, right? If there's an emergency. And I guess he was kind of kind of typical Swede in that sense, that he embraced these technologies early on, but wasn't always sure where to use it or how to apply it in daily life. And I guess, so that sparked my interest to a degree. I think we also had a couple of really large entrepreneurs and sort of tech ventures early on in the sort of the first .com boom, which was in, I guess, sort of in the early part of the 2000s. But 95 is really where tech started. And I was, I guess, in my teens at that time, mid-teens, and then in my late teens as the industry started to take off. So I was interested in it. I bought stocks in these tech companies. And I was interested in the stock market early on. Yeah, I guess entrepreneurship wasn't always clear. My dad is still an entrepreneur and was always an entrepreneur, and my mother too. And so it was part of my bloodline, right? I tried some things, but sometimes you end up what you say you're not going to be, which is following your parents, right? And I didn't take over their businesses. I kind of did my own thing and moved to Hong Kong at a relatively early age. I was 21 when I moved to Hong Kong to start my previous kind of business that eventually was sold. Yeah.
Wow, so early on that you moved on to do your own thing. 15 years old, and you went to Hong Kong to really start your own thing. I mean, of course, you said like entrepreneurship has always been in your blood, but you wanted to do your own thing. But wow, that was pretty early too. And what was it that you started doing in Hong Kong? And what was a pivotal moment that got you there?
So I guess the moment was me and two friends increasingly grew tired of tiny Stockholm, right? And it's a lovely place, sure, and it's beautiful, and everybody says, oh, I was there for a couple of days. I love the water and it's such a picturesque and beautiful city, and the architecture and the food and blah blah blah. And yeah, sure, it is if you're there for a few days, but you certainly don't want to live there. So I think we were, we wanted to look at an opportunity to go and build something. We all kind of had the inclination of entrepreneurship, and then at the time we had a couple of quite successful digital magazines / communities just for the Stockholm region. I think we had 3 at the time. And so we thought, could that concept travel somewhere else where there is a bigger market? And Hong Kong kind of came around as the place to launch it because, Yappies, early adopters, very vibrant in New York or London of Asia. This is in 05, 06. So post first .com kind of crash, but market kind of building up again.
Right.
Tech still relevant, more sort of, it was getting more, I think, increasingly more robust and a better use case, and some of the tech companies started to make money. And I think that was important because during the bubble, it was like, this could become this incredible thing.
Yes.
But the foundations and the fundamentals weren't there. So that was starting to kind of come. But we moved to Hong Kong. We were inspired by these kind of digital magazines that were taking the static and putting it online. So very Web 1, right? And we started that in Hong Kong with a community, with the magazine that was daily updated, with obviously, the images for you go to the nice parties, and you take these images and you put them online, and people can then escape for 5 minutes from their life to kind of see what happened during the weekend, or who went out with who, etc., etc. We had an event guide, a city guide. So quite a complete concept. I guess to explain the concept in a layman way, we can say it was like a Time Out magazine online, but with a more high-end luxury inclination to it, right? And that was what we brought and kind of launched in Hong Kong at an early age. And this is, where we try to get the luxury brands to come and put ads around all of these content pieces, right, to monetize it. And we were gunning for the big luxury brands,
big luxury
Kering
brands.
Group, LVMH, Richemont, all of these groups that collected their 40 or 50 brands. And that was very hard to convince them, right? So I remember Lufthansa Private Jets was one of our, early advertisers.
That's it.
we had Sony Ericsson as
Right.
because of the Swedish connection.
Wow.
We had been introduced by the CEO to the
Yep.
guy who ran Hong Kong, and then he
Mhm.
bought ads and sponsored our first launch event. And but it was not the advertisers we really wanted to. It was more lifestyle centric. We wanted to be more sort of luxury. But that was kind of the escape from
Early.
Sweden, I suppose. And then I
Yeah,
stayed back
you
in Asia for a long time.
a long time, and you were early adopters. You stayed there for a long time, but you felt like you really were the early adopters on there, and you did it in an industry or location where it was truly booming. It was really starting to get into that, tech phase, so to speak. What else? What before we start getting into My PetGo, by the way, for our audience list, we'll get there eventually. But it's very interesting to kind of establish the success of Richard. Richard, you stayed there in the Asian market for 15 years. What got you to stay there for so long? And what do you take out of that experience to that you bring now today?
Yeah, I mean, look, I probably stayed there a bit more than 15 years, more like
Wow.
17, 18. And I was just there last month, right, in Singapore and Indonesia. My wife is Indonesian Chinese, so we do go there a fair bit. And, our son needs to see that side of the world and meet also that side of the family. And I guess, yeah, coming back to Europe is not difficult because we spent a lot of time here in Spain as well in between.
Right.
So Barcelona has always been the European home. I could probably never go back to the north of Europe. Not that I dislike it, but I don't like the climate. I
All
don't
right.
like, the underlying socialism that still is there.
Wow. Okay.
I think for tech it's not a bad place, but I think
Hmm.
it's expensive. Um, and
Expensive.
certainly I don't like the taxes, right? So
Of
so
course.
I couldn't do that. But South of Europe I can do. Love Asia, still go there a lot, and I think the perfect harmony is kind of spending a bit of time in Southeast Asia. I do like the north as well, but Southeast Asia is kind of home to me. So Singapore,
Hmm.
Malaysia, Indonesia,
Wow.
Thailand,
Wow.
Vietnam, and then spending some time here, and then obviously US, right? So yeah,
Right. So work is like Europe, US, home, vacation, Asia. Would you?
yeah. It's kind of like if I'm in Europe, if I'm CET in terms of time zone, I can work
Yeah.
half day with Asia. I can work full day with Europe. I can work half day with North America. So it's the sweet spot for me. I used to live in Singapore for 15 years, and Singapore is an amazing place.
Mhm.
Still love it. Still a tax resident there, and you know we'll go there a lot more. But geographically, it just didn't make sense having a
Of
20-hour flight
course.
to New York.
Of course.
When you need to go for a 2-day meeting, like I could in theory go for
Hmm.
a 2-day meeting easily from Europe, right? 7 hours.
Hmm.
You don't get completely um crazy in
Jet
terms
lag, so to
of
speak, and get
yeah,
tired
yeah,
and
yeah,
everything
that's
and
right.
all that. And I
Yeah.
mean, so Richard, you clearly stretch yourself out in all these different industries, so much experience, so many years between different locations as well. But today, your focus is on My PetGo, which is really, I think it's best to ask you exactly to come from you what My PetGo is and what it does for the market right now. So, Richard, talk to us a little bit about PetGo and why has it become your focus right now?
Right. So as I was previously in the media industry, I learned, so my main audience was millennials, and we used to call them yappies or early adopters, but obviously millennials wasn't yet minted as a term, but that was always our target audience, right? These were the people that were early with the iPhones and started to consume content on their mobile phone as opposed to glossy print magazine or TV and other shapes and forms. And so I understand that audience quite well. Of course, today
Of
Gen Z
course.
is sort of the younger variety or version of that.
Yeah.
And what I started to discover towards my end of the media industry was
Mhm.
data is increasingly more important. We had a very hard time, and to that story, I sold the previous business called Lifestyle Asia to Hubert Burda Media
Right. Wow.
in 2016 December. And
Mhm.
then I stayed with them for many years in in the capacity of regional managing director, and then head of digital media and technology, and then I expanded Lifestyle Asia. We were already, when we sold it, in Hong Kong, Singapore, Thailand, and Malaysia, and then we expanded it to India, set up a Delhi and Mumbai edition, and then set up a European edition in France. Spent a lot of time in HQ in Munich, and helped with the broader kind of idea of how do we digitalize all the static magazines that we have, and how do we bring them online? How do we help with knowledge transfer? How do we train the writers and editors to do this in an online sense where we can drive more traffic? How can we monetize the content? So I did a lot of the group initiatives, and we were fighting, as everybody, Meta and TikTok was obviously on the rise, and Google and everybody else. And what these guys have that we did not have was, all the data that we signed away when we signed up to these social media platforms a decade ago, right? And so they had a precision of being able to do things that we couldn't do. Even though we had very rich data, we knew where people lived, we knew what they earned, we were sending in more our beautiful glossy printed magazines, and obviously we had our online versions and all of this, but it was really hard to compete. So I told myself, whatever, I probably need to leave media, because this fight against the big tech is not going to go away. Now remember, big tech doesn't produce any articles, they don't produce any content, but they have the users, right? So they have the supply and they have the demand. And so it's really hard to compete, right? And then you have to give your content away for free and put it up there, because if you're not there, you're nowhere, right?
Yes, of course.
So it was clear to me that data is going to be king moving forward, right? And just put that in context, this is probably somewhere in 2018, 19, right? So it's some time ago. It's not something I figured out in my sleep yesterday. And so I could see that, and I could see how it transformed media, but also how it will going to transform a lot of other industries. And then, as a pet owner and pet parent, before I got a human boy who's 4, but then I got a 10-year-old Maltese, which is my fur boy, right?
Wow.
And so I've had him, so I could relate to the Gen Z millennial type of individual that look at the dog or the cat as the default fur baby, right? There is no human kids. Maybe they don't want to have kids, but the sort of fur baby is their non-human baby, if that makes any sense. So I could relate to that because I've been it. I understand the target audience because it was the same audience I was communicating with where I built these magazines. And, we were the largest in Southeast Asia and North Asia as we sold this, right? We did a couple of things, right? To understand how to communicate with them, what kind of content and things they like. And then I understood, obviously, that data was going to be crucial. So I thought, okay, pet, data, Gen Z, millennials, what can I do in that constellation? And then I sort of started playing with the idea of, okay, I got this dog. How can I understand how this dog is feeling physically and emotionally?
Right.
How can I better, as an owner, bond with my pet by understanding my pet, right? Because pets don't talk. We're trying to give them a voice through data, and then explaining the data in a layman way so that the pet owner can sort of say, I see, this is why my dog is constantly barking, or this is why my dog is laying on the side and kind of doing this odd kind of movement. And so it started with, okay, what type of data do we need for this? And the idea was, we're going to need sensor data that comes from sensors. So if you think of a Whoop strap or an Oura ring or an Apple Watch or any kind of, I think it all started with Fitbit, and a lot of people kind of use Fitbit as the original gangster of a human health device. And, the whole step count, counting your steps per day, that was kind of invented by Fitbit.
Yes.
And so what I created was this monitor that goes around the neck. This is Caesar, my dog's monitor, and it has a temperature gauge here on the back. It has a lot of onboard sensors that we can't see. They're sitting inside of the monitor. It goes around the neck like that, and then you kind of flip it and it sits there. And what the monitor does is that it looks at the 4 core vitals. So it looks at temperature, so high and low, obviously, which we can help the pet owner to understand whether there is possibly hyperthermia or heat stroke that could happen. But temperature is a very important metric for us to collect and
Right.
understand because it correlates with a lot of other health markers. The second
Right.
marker that we look at is respiration. So obviously breathing. We look at pulse. We look at heart rate variability.
Wow.
So HRV, I think every human health device looks
Wow.
at, and it's a marker we understand as humans. But in the pet world, the veterinary community, they don't really use HRV that often. It's a
Right.
rather new metric for them. So we're trying to kind of own this marker and explain it, work with science, work with medicine in order to better explain to them how it can be leveraged and used in a medicinal sense, right?
Yes.
So we look at that. We look at behavior traits. So that's the 4 core markers, right? But then we look
Behavior
at
traits.
behavior traits, activity. So that's
Activity.
inactivity and activity. So mobility broadly, all sorts of itching, licking, scratching, all types of behaviors, right? And then
Wow.
a lot of the data points get kind of triaged, and together with the input from the pet owner, we usually call this self-assessment, where we ask certain questions or we have a lot of answers, because when the profile was set up, we know gender, age, underlying medical conditions, all of these different things that are super important. So the way we do this, we use ECG or ballistic cardiography, which is the science behind what we're doing. It's not some mumbo jumbo, but then it's AI models where the X, Y, and Z values that are being pulled out from the sensors get plugged into these AI models.
Wow.
And the AI models then feed up these, HRV, PRV, restoration rate, or any of the other health markers in a, 85 to 90% accuracy. As we spot abnormalities in these health markers, where they are, so you have a benchmark for your individual pets, then you have a collective benchmark. But as the values go either high or low, we call that out of range from where the benchmark is. We then notify the owner through a push notification and say, look, this marker is now out of range. Keep an eye on it. Don't panic. And if that marker is if that is sustained and out of range for a longer period of time, let's say 30 minutes, you get a second one where it tells you why it's not out of range. And then it gives you some suggestions with CTA buttons. You can click on these buttons and it will take you to a solution. It could be a televet, it could be a physical product, it could be a deeper self-assessment tool where we need to ask you a few more questions. So that's what we're doing. The latest thing we've built for this is what we call longevity, and that's a program that's inside of the app. We give you daily tasks to perform. So this is across, nutrition and hygiene, mobility and rest, and health screenings and next step recommendations, right?
Wow.
And so if you do these things, you should have a pet that by default should be healthier, happier, and also as a result should live longer. So we increase lifespan. So that's really what we're gunning for. We're trying to create in your pocket solution that can guide you and direct you so that you and your pet can live longer and happier together. I mean, you might not live longer just because you're doing the right things for your pet, but if your pet is giving you that much love and support back,
of course,
we got to remember that the pet for some people is the only companion they have.
Yes.
Right. That's who sits next to them on the sofa. That's who eats together with them. So we got to respect that part. But look, there is a lot of correlation between having a pet that gives a lot of love back to you, unconditional love, right? And the way you're feeling, and how that could also help you with endorphins and
precisely
creating this positive kind of thing that's sometimes is lacking. Yeah.
Your overall well-being, basically, that unconditional love, of course, contributes to how you feel and how you feel much better, of course. And this is no secret. Again, like you said, you fully understood that market, the fur babies, the fur parents. They all know that you knew that they are just as important to them, as they treat them like family, kids. And what better way to take care of them by knowing what they need. And I love how you put the science together with My PetGo and how it helps us understand our pets a lot more today. Richard, that's really, really cool what you've done with PetGo. Of course, we wish you all the success when it comes to that. And I think it's an industry right now that is ripe for, it's very open. A lot of the market is huge for all those fur parents. Um, in your case, personally, you've navigated multiple industries successfully. What parallels do you draw now, as we begin wrapping this up? What parallels do you draw from the previous industry experience that you have that you are now applying to pet wellness when it comes to understanding customer needs, or overall when it comes to the success of My PetGo?
Well, I mean, look, very different industries, right? So I might understand the audience, the target audience, what they like, but do I
Right.
truly understand their want and their need? And that's the question, right? So I think what I've had to learn here is that we need to do a lot of A and B testing, a lot of experimenting to kind of figure out how do we create a product that truly resonates with the audience. I think, you get different degrees of pet owners. It's really hard to win everybody over because everybody is different and they treat their pets differently. And some people say, I don't need some apparatus to tell me how my pet is doing. I can look at it and it will tell me by waving the tail or by the eyesight or whatever it may be. So I guess what I learned from my previous life was obviously the importance of data, and that stays very true in this business. It's all about, we're not a wearable business,
Right.
right? We're a data business. That's what we do. We check through tons of data. We're selling data. So when you buy a monitor, they're inexpensive. And then there's a data plan for it, and that gives you the longevity program. It gives you next step recommendations. It gives you all these insights, right? So I think really the parallel is I understood the audience, understood obviously data was super important in the media industry as well.
Right.
But I guess the one strong correlation is whatever we used to do was very data driven. And when I came into the group formation with the company that acquired our business, we kind of put this data driven strategy in place for everything we did, right? In particular, how we curated content. And I think that I've taken with me to this venture, like data-driven approach. Look at the data; it doesn't lie. You got to look at it right though, because if you look at the data, in the wrong context, you're not going to draw conclusions from it. But so I think that's certainly part of it. I would, however, say that the digital media industry and what I'm in now, they're vastly different. It's it's there are nuances, but it is. Before I sold eyeballs, now I'm selling, data insights, and so
Fascinating.
it is different. It's a different audience. I mean, I'm still very B2B because we do partner with pet insurance and we partner with pet longevity companies and other pet tech companies, but and then they bundle it with their core business in a meaningful way, and we can white label everything. So there are My PetGo apps out there. There are My PetGo monitors being used in under a completely different umbrella name today. And moving forward, we're going to see a lot of that. Yeah.
Wow. Well, of course, hopefully, again, all the success. Hopefully, we see a lot more of that as well. Of course, the website is mypetgo.com. Richard, where else can we find you? Where else can we learn more?
Well, I mean, I'm not very social. I felt like I lived in that world before, and they were also my competitors. So I wasn't, more go to LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's Richard Nilsson. So that's RichardNilsson. And you'll easily find me there. You can put that with My PetGo or whatever, and you'll find it. And you can reach out to me through a DM there, and I usually respond, unless you're selling websites or some kind of consulting. But if you want a second opinion or something, reach out. I'm happy to give back to fellow entrepreneurs, especially if you're a junior or baby entrepreneur. This is your first venture. So happy to do that. I guess that's that. I mean, My PetGo is undergoing some renovations, so there will be a new web coming up in
very cool.
the next few months, and there's a new app being built as well.
Wow.
Where we've taken a stronger stance to the longevity piece. So there's a lot of things happening.
Absolutely. Well, again, to our audience and listeners out there, mypetgo.com. Check that out. And of course, look out for your nearest pet store and pet insurance. Maybe you're gonna find them there as well. And of course, go connect with Richard on LinkedIn. Richard, thank you so much for coming on the show. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you, Joshua, for having me. I appreciate it.
To our audience and listeners out there, thank you for watching the episode. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and we will see you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, fantastic. Wow. What did you think of that, Richard? What did you think of the interview?
Yeah, it was good. It was good. Short and sweet. I mean,
Yeah.
I see the format that a lot of people are changing to is somewhere between 15, 20, and 30 minutes. I've done podcasts that are 2 hours, and I'm like, what person will want to sit and listen to all of this?
2 hours, right? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it's like if you go for a walk for 30 minutes or you're in the gym on the treadmill for 30 minutes, then you can pop an episode.
Boom.
And that kind of fits, right?
That's it.
But
Precisely.
if you're doing them too long, it's like, I don't know. So I think that's good. I think the questions were good. I mean, I try to not tell the same story each time because I do a couple of these. To me, the one thing that I missed when I was in the media industry was podcasts were kind of becoming the thing, but I left before it. I mean, it was the fastest growing media as I left the industry, but I think it's the most authentic and most interesting format that there is.
I agree.
And so we try to focus on it a lot. And I love podcasts. We don't know who's going to be the next Tim Ferriss or Joe Rogan or whatever, right? But I think what's interesting with podcast is it's overtaken the old type of very niche magazines. You had a climbing magazine. Now you got you got 300 climbing podcasts for climbers that can listen to where is the best mountain to go and climb. And so it's very interesting how it's taken over. And I love that.
All right, so here's the thing. We try to get a little bit better every day, but we can't do it without you. So if you like the video, make sure to like and subscribe below. And if you have any comments, just leave them in the space under.